All right, so I'm sitting here with Trudy Morgan-Cole. She's a candidate for the MUN Board of Regents for the alumni elections that are going on until August 22nd. If you're a graduate of MUN, Marine Institute, or Grenfell campus, you can submit your vote up to 6 candidates. So hey, Trudy, how's it going?
It's going well, thanks.
Tell us a little bit about your history with MUN. When did you start as a student and what did you study?
I guess my history with MUN is a little unusual in that I started as a student in the fall of 1982 when we still had grade 11 here. So I was 16 when I started at MUN, but I only did the first year of my undergrad here, and then I moved away and finished my undergrad degree elsewhere. But then later I came back and moved home and did 2 master's degrees at MUN, a master's in English in 1993 and a master's in education in 2005. So yeah, I've been around for a while.
What made you put your name forward for the MUN Board of Regents elections?
I guess really just thinking about, there are so many issues in our province, in our community today, and it's sort of that thing of thinking, where is an area where my sort of background and knowledge and expertise, which in my case is mostly in education, where is an area where I could maybe have a voice and make a difference? And Board of Regents is not something I had given a lot of thought to until the last few years. And then, hearing some of the issues at university and hearing people talking about what the Board of Regents does or doesn't do, I thought maybe this is an area where I, as a MUN alumna, can, in a very small way, have a voice and get the opportunity to speak for some of the issues that are important to me.
Right on. So there's been a lot going on with MUN the past couple of years, a lot of headlines. What stood out to you in the past couple of years as kind of, this is big, I want to be a part of this conversation and decision making?
Well, there's a lot of things, obviously, but clearly, the government cuts to the university and the subsequent tuition increases, that's a big thing because, tuition has been so low for so long, comparable to other universities and other provinces. And I guess I was one of those, middle-aged alumni people who, when they said, well, the tuition is going to be increased, I thought, well, that's not such a bad thing. And then I was talking to some younger people, including my daughter, and I said, yeah, tuition is going up, but it's still the lowest in Canada. And she said to me, yeah, that means the lowest tuition in Canada is still unaffordable for a huge number of students. And that was a perspective I hadn't thought about before. So it made me want to kind of look a little more into it. Also, the tuition increase for international students, which I feel like is coming from an era when we thought of international students as, oh, these are wealthy people from other countries who have money to spend in Canada, but that's not the reality for most of our international students now. As a person who works both in education and in the arts, as a writer, I'm very concerned about the role of the arts in education and the perceived necessity to pour all the resources into STEM subjects, which is important, absolutely, but the idea that the arts and humanities are somehow lesser or don't deserve the same attention is another thing that I think is very concerning for the future of our province.
What do you think about the current trajectory in higher education to have a more profit-focused model rather than a public model? And do you think that is happening here at Memorial?
I think there's a tendency in that direction, and I think there's people who think that is the right direction, and I really don't. I feel that, our public university should be by the people and for the people. It is, it's a public good for the people of this province, particularly for the youth of this province, and I don't think it should be profit focused. I think it should be focused at, on being a public good.
So the Board of Regents has faced criticism for decisions like the tuition hike, like the salary of the president. They're also faced criticism for lack of transparency and the confidentiality is a big clause in a lot of these governing bodies of universities. How do you think you'll balance transparency with confidentiality if elected to the Board of Regents?
I think that's something I will have to figure out as I go because I am very interested in transparency and in clear lines of communication. But at the same time, if you sign up to be a member of the board, you have to follow the restrictions of what that board asks of you. But I think the push should always be in the direction of more transparency and more openness because, again, the university belongs to the people, and of all the people, it belongs most to the students, I would argue. So the more transparency, the better. And that's certainly something that I would be pushing for.
So back to the tuition hike. If elected to the Board of Regents, would you vote to increase tuition?
I would definitely prefer not to. I mean, I feel like I can't say how I would definitely vote on anything until I was on the board and knew what all the issues were, but my inclination would always be not to vote for more tuition increases. I personally believe university education should be free. I think the countries that are providing free higher education are on the right track, and that's the direction we should be moving towards. But at the very least, if we have to be charging tuition, it should be as affordable as possible. So my immediate sort of starting point position is that I'm always going to be inclined towards being opposed to tuition hikes.
So the faculty strike, a huge piece of the coming out of it was collegial governance. How do you think MUN can improve on its governance, and what changes would you like to bring to the Board of Regents if elected?
So this is an area where I feel like I have more learning to do because university governance has not been a specialty of mine. Again, and I've really only started thinking about it and learning about it these last few years. But my understanding is that one of the issues was seats for teaching faculty on the Board of Regents, and that most other universities, or at least many other universities, have this and MUN doesn't. Absolutely. I mean, the teaching faculty, again, are among the constituency who should be most represented. And, I'm very honored to be a MUN alumnus and to be running for one of the alumni seats on the board. But really, even more so than alumni, it's the teaching faculty should be represented on the Board of Regents for sure.
So tell us a bit about your experience in education is your background, and you're also a writer of historical fiction. What in your experience lends to this kind of board?
Well, it's kind of funny because people who know me well know that I usually try to avoid boards and committees where possible. So to be actively running for a role on a board, I wouldn't be doing if it wasn't something I felt really strongly about. But I've worked in education my whole career. I taught in high school, junior high and high school, and then the last 16 years of my teaching career, I've been teaching in adult education in the community sector, working at the Murphy Center, where I taught mostly young people, but some older people as well, who were looking at finishing their high school education and then moving on to post-secondary. So I've seen a lot of young people, often from very, very disadvantaged backgrounds, moving into the university, and that created an interest for me even in sort of what atmosphere are we creating and what opportunities are there for them. That's something that's a concern. And when I hear about things like, for example, university students having to rely on food banks, like that shouldn't be happening in our province. It is. And so when I think about some of the young people that I've seen from our program going on to university and just wondering what supports are in place for them and what challenges they're going to face, that's definitely been a big concern for me. And then, of course, the other side of my career is as a writer, writing Newfoundland historical fiction for the last several years. And I guess it's just my involvement in the arts community that really, to me, our arts community is such a vibrant part of our province, and so many of our artists are MUN alumni and have come through the programs here. And I think, again, that just goes back to that thing that, to me, the value of the arts in education and the arts in our community cannot be ignored and shouldn't be backpedaled or made to seem as though it's something less important than, business and sciences and engineering, all of which are also important. But I feel really strongly about a focus on the arts and education. Our government loves to promote our cultural sector in terms of tourism and in terms of selling us to the world, but there needs to be an investment in that at all levels of society, and that includes at the university level.
The government announced the $68.4 million cut to the yearly tuition offset grant to be phased in over 5 years. What did you make of that decision, and what do you think it says about our priorities right now as a province?
I understand that the provincial government has tough decisions to make. I mean, that's the reasons why I'm not running for public office. It's a difficult time, and I recognize that they're looking at the cost of education, the cost of healthcare, and where can we make cuts, I don't think tuition for university students I don't think the university is a place those cuts should be made. I think this is something where we need to be investing, not cutting. And I realize that it's difficult, and people will say, where's the money going to come from? But you have to look at, where you make cuts says a lot about your priorities. And to me, education always has to be a top priority, and that's not just K-12 education, that's public higher education. So the government should be investing, if anything, more in the university rather than less.
Is there anything else you'd like to say to the alumni voting in the upcoming election?
I just hope that all alumni do vote. I didn't vote in the Board of Regents election until the last election cycle because I didn't know it was happening, and I hadn't been that active as an alumna in, alumni association things until I did vote in one and started learning a bit more about it. So I would just really like to encourage anybody who is eligible as an alumni of the university, find out about what's going on at MUN, find out about what the issues are, take the time to read the bios of myself and the 45 other people who are running. I know it's a lot, but you'll find people whose values align with yours. I want to run because the values that I want to promote in education are important to me, and I know there are people out there who share those. So I hope that those people will vote, but mostly I hope everybody will vote.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
You're very welcome. Thank you.